Many of us must have read John 19:25, where it says, "But standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother, and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene." Yes, probably we know that Mary was at the foot of the cross. However, what if I told you that Mary's presence at the cross wasn't just the act of a grieving mother? What if her standing there changed the entire meaning of salvation itself? The answer will shake everything you thought you knew about Good Friday. If this video opens your heart to something new today, hit that like button right away. Share this with someone who needs to hear Mary's story, and don't forget to subscribe, because we're diving deep into the mysteries that transform lives. Picture this: Jerusalem, around 3 in the afternoon. The sky turns dark. The earth shakes. Most people have fled in terror, yet one woman remains. Mary, the Mother of God, stands directly beneath her dying son. But here's what most people miss: she wasn't there by accident. From the moment Gabriel appeared to her as a young girl, Mary knew this day would come. The angel's message wasn't just about a miraculous birth. Hidden within those words was a prophecy of suffering that would pierce her heart like a sword. And Mary said yes anyway. But why? What drove the Queen of Heaven to witness the most brutal execution in human history? The answer lies in a mystery so beautiful, so powerful, that it reveals the true purpose behind every mother's love, every human sacrifice, and every moment of suffering we endure. Think about the most difficult moment in your life. Were you alone? Or was there someone who chose to stay with you when everyone else walked away? Mary's presence at Calvary teaches us something revolutionary about love itself. She could have stayed home. She could have sent the apostles. She could have waited for news. Instead, the Mother of God made a choice that would echo through eternity. And that choice reveals 3 secrets that will change how you understand suffering forever. The first secret centers on something theologians call the co-redemption. This isn't a word you hear every Sunday, but it holds the key to understanding Mary's role at the cross. When Jesus was dying, Mary wasn't just watching. She was participating in the salvation of the world. But wait, doesn't that diminish Christ's sacrifice? Actually, it does the exact opposite. Let me explain why. When God created humanity, he established something beautiful. He chose to work through human cooperation. He didn't force salvation upon us. He invited us to participate. And at the most crucial moment in history, he invited Mary to unite her suffering with his son's sacrifice. Every contraction during Jesus' birth pointed to this moment. Every day she watched him grow pointed to this cross. Every teaching he shared, every miracle he performed, every step toward Jerusalem. Mary knew where it was leading, and she walked that path with him willingly. Here's where it gets incredible. Mary's yes at the Annunciation was just the beginning. At the foot of the cross, she said yes again. But this time, it wasn't to bringing life into the world. It was to letting that life be given away for the sake of all humanity. Can you think of a more difficult yes than that? Drop a comment below and share the hardest yes you've ever had to say. Because Mary's example shows us how our own difficult choices can become part of something much greater than ourselves. The second secret involves a promise that was made centuries before Jesus was born. The prophet Simeon looked at the infant Jesus in the temple and spoke words that must have chilled Mary's heart. "A sword will pierce your own soul too." For 33 years, Mary carried those words. She watched her son's ministry unfold, knowing that each miracle brought him closer to the cross. Each time the religious leaders plotted against him, she remembered Simeon's prophecy. Each time Jesus spoke about his coming death, that sword twisted deeper. But here's what's remarkable. Mary never tried to stop it. She never begged Jesus to run away. She never suggested he tone down his message to avoid confrontation. Instead, she supported his mission, even though it meant her own heart would be shattered. This reveals something stunning about divine love. It's not possessive. It doesn't cling. True love, the kind Mary demonstrated, is willing to let go when letting go serves a higher purpose. Think about parents who support their children's dangerous military service. Think about spouses who encourage their partners to pursue risky dreams. Think about friends who stand by each other through impossible choices. Mary's love at the cross shows us what sacrificial love looks like in its purest form. But the sword that pierced Mary's heart did more than cause her pain. It opened her heart to become the mother of all believers. In her suffering, she gained millions of spiritual children. In her loss, she found a new family. The wound became the source of her greatest gift to the church. Have you ever noticed how your deepest wounds often become your greatest strengths? Share in the comments how God has used your pain to help others. Because Mary's example at the cross shows us that our suffering is never wasted when we unite it with Christ's sacrifice. The third secret is perhaps the most beautiful of all. When Jesus looked down from the cross and saw his mother standing there, he didn't just see Mary of Nazareth. He saw the representation of all humanity, faithful, suffering, hoping, and loving despite the darkness. In that moment, Jesus spoke words that changed everything. "Woman, behold your son." Then to John, "Behold your mother." But scholars tell us something incredible about these words. Jesus wasn't just providing for his mother's care. He was establishing a new family. Mary became the mother of John. But more than that, she became the mother of all the beloved disciples. She became our mother, and we became her children. The cross didn't just win our salvation. It gave us a heavenly mother who would intercede for us, guide us, and love us with the same heart that loved Jesus. This is why Catholics turn to Mary in times of trouble, not because she's divine, but because she's the mother Jesus gave us. She understands suffering because she stood at the foot of the cross. She understands loss because she watched her son die. She understands hope because she witnessed his resurrection. But there's something else. Mary's presence at the cross also represents the church itself. She's the first believer, the first disciple, the first to say yes to God's plan. When the apostles fled in fear, she remained. When courage failed, love endured. She shows us what faith looks like when everything seems lost. If you've ever felt abandoned during your darkest hour, remember Mary at the cross. If you've ever wondered if God cares about your pain, look at how he honored Mary's suffering by making her the mother of all believers. He sees your faithfulness too, especially when it costs you everything. Here's something that might surprise you about Mary's presence at the cross. She wasn't crying uncontrollably. She wasn't screaming or fainting or demanding that someone save her son. The Gospel accounts describe her as standing firm, standing strong, standing in faith even while her heart was breaking. This tells us something powerful about supernatural strength. It doesn't mean we don't feel pain. It means we can stand in the midst of pain because we trust in God's greater plan. Mary demonstrates that we can grieve and believe simultaneously. We can hurt and hope at the same time. But here's a question that might trouble you. If Mary knew this was God's plan, why didn't she try to stop it? If she loved Jesus so much, why didn't she beg him to escape? The answer reveals the difference between human love and divine love. Human love is often selfish. We want to protect those we care about, even if it means interfering with their purpose. Divine love, the kind Mary demonstrated, trusts God's plan even when it's painful. It supports God's will even when it costs everything. This is why Mary is called the Queen of Martyrs. She didn't die physically at the cross, but she died spiritually to her own desires. She chose God's will over her maternal instincts. She chose humanity's salvation over her son's safety. And in making that choice, she became a partner in our redemption. Can you think of a time when you had to choose between what you wanted and what God wanted? Leave a comment about how that choice changed you, because Mary's example shows us that our greatest victories often come through our greatest surrenders. The location itself tells us something crucial. Mary didn't stand far away, watching from a safe distance. She positioned herself at the foot of the cross, as close as possible to Jesus' suffering. This wasn't just maternal instinct, this was a deliberate choice to unite her pain with his sacrifice. In that position, Mary would have been covered by Jesus' blood as it fell from the cross. She would have heard every word he spoke. She would have seen every moment of his agony. This wasn't comfortable. This wasn't easy. This was love in its most radical form. And here's what's incredible. Tradition tells us that Mary was the one who received Jesus' body when it was taken down from the cross. The same arms that held him as seen Gabriel's promise fulfilled. She had watched miracles unfold throughout Jesus' ministry. She knew that death wasn't the end of the story. Her presence at the cross was an act of faith as much as an act of love. This is why Mary is our model for how to face life's darkest moments. She shows us that we can trust God even when we can't understand His plan. We can have faith even when everything seems lost. We can love even when love leads to suffering. The early church fathers wrote extensively about Mary's role at the cross, and their insights reveal layers of meaning we might miss. They saw her not just as Jesus' mother, but as the new Eve. Where the first Eve's disobedience brought death into the world, Mary's obedience, even at the foot of the cross, participated in bringing life. They also saw her as the personification of Israel itself. All of salvation history led to this moment. All the prophecies, all the promises, all the preparation pointed to the cross. And Mary, as the faithful daughter of Israel, stood there representing her entire people's hope for redemption. But perhaps most beautifully, they saw her as the image of the church. Faithful, suffering, hoping, and persevering, even when darkness seemed to triumph. Every believer who has ever endured hardship for the sake of faith follows in Mary's footsteps at Calvary. If this is speaking to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that share button and let others discover the beauty of Mary's faithfulness. Subscribe for more content that explores the deep truths of our Catholic faith. And let me know in the comments which aspect of Mary's presence at the cross touches you most deeply. The mystery deepens when we consider what happened after Jesus died. The Gospels tell us that Mary was among the women who prepared his body for burial. She who had wrapped him in swaddling clothes as a baby now helped wrap him in burial cloths as a man. The circle was complete, yet Mary knew it wasn't really the end. This is where Mary's faith shines most brilliantly. She had lived with the mystery of the Incarnation for over 30 years. She had pondered Gabriel's words, Simeon's prophecy, and Jesus' own teachings about his resurrection. Even in the depths of Good Friday's darkness, Mary's heart held onto resurrection hope. Can you maintain hope when everything looks hopeless? Can you trust God's promises when circumstances seem to contradict them? Mary's example at the cross teaches us that this kind of faith is possible even in our darkest hours. Some theologians suggest that Mary's presence at the cross was necessary for the completion of salvation itself. Not because Jesus' sacrifice was insufficient, but because God chose to work through human cooperation from the beginning. Mary's yes at the Annunciation needed to be confirmed by her yes at Calvary. Think about it this way. If Mary had refused to be the mother of the Savior, would the Incarnation have happened differently? If she had run away from the cross, would something have been missing from the redemption story? The Church teaches us that God could have saved us any way He chose, but He chose to involve human cooperation in His plan. Mary's cooperation reached its peak at the foot of the cross. There, she offered not just her son, but herself for the salvation of the world. There, she became not just the mother of Jesus, but the spiritual mother of all the redeemed. There, she participated in the very act that opened heaven to humanity. This participation wasn't passive. It wasn't just about being present. It was about actively uniting her will with God's will, even when that will led through unimaginable suffering. It was about choosing to be part of the solution to humanity's greatest problem, even when the cost was the life of her beloved son. The implications of this are staggering. If Mary could participate in our redemption through her faithful presence at the cross, what does that mean for our own sufferings? What does that mean for our own choices to stand with Christ when it costs us dearly? What does that mean for our own opportunities to cooperate with God's saving work in the world? Here's a challenge for you. Think of someone in your life who is going through their own Calvary experience. How can you be present with them the way Mary was present with Jesus? Share your thoughts in the comments, because learning to love like Mary loved is the greatest gift we can give to others. The medical reality of crucifixion makes Mary's presence even more remarkable. Crucifixion was designed to be a slow, agonizing death that could last for hours or even days. Mary stood there through all of it. She watched her son struggle to breathe. She heard his cries of pain. She witnessed the gradual failure of his body. Yet she stayed. Love kept her there when everything else would have driven her away. This is the love that conquers death, not by preventing it, but by remaining faithful through it, not by avoiding suffering, but by transforming suffering into something redemptive. This is why Mary is called the Sorrowful Mother. Her 7 sorrows, traditionally meditated upon by Catholics, all point toward this moment at the cross. Every previous sorrow in her life prepared her for this ultimate sorrow, and every sorrow was transformed by her faithful response into a source of grace for the world. But here's what's beautiful about Mary's sorrows. They didn't make her bitter. They didn't make her angry at God. They didn't make her lose her faith. Instead, they made her heart more compassionate, more understanding, more capable of loving others who suffer. Her wounds became sources of healing for others. As we approach the conclusion of this meditation, consider this. Mary's presence at the foot of the cross wasn't just about one moment in history. It was about establishing a pattern for how love responds to suffering. It was about showing us that the deepest love doesn't run away from pain, but runs toward it when love is needed most. Every parent who sits beside a sick child's bed follows Mary's example. Every spouse who cares for a partner through illness walks in Mary's footsteps. Every friend who stays present during someone's dark night of the soul participates in the same love that kept Mary at the cross. The cross has become the universal symbol of Christianity, but we must never forget that it was also the place where divine love and human love met in perfect harmony. Jesus loved us enough to die for us. Mary loved him enough to stay with him while he did it. And in that meeting of loves, our salvation was accomplished and our path was illuminated. Tell me in the comments about a time when someone stayed with you through your suffering. How did their presence change your experience? Because understanding Mary's presence at the cross helps us understand how powerful it is simply to be present with others in their pain. The final secret I want to share with you is this. Mary's presence at the cross continues today. The same love that kept her standing at Calvary keeps her interceding for us in heaven. The same maternal heart that suffered with Jesus suffers with us in our struggles. The same faith that trusted God through the darkest hour continues to trust on our behalf. This is why Catholics have such devotion to Mary, not because we worship her, but because we recognize her as the perfect example of human cooperation with divine grace. Not because she saves us, but because she shows us how to respond to the one who does. Not because she replaces Jesus, but because she leads us to him more perfectly than anyone else ever could. When you face your own moments of darkness, remember Mary at the foot of the cross. When you're called to make difficult choices, think of her yes that cost her everything. When you wonder if God sees your faithfulness, remember how he honored her standing by making her the mother of all believers. As we conclude this reflection on Mary's presence at the cross, let's return to our original question. Why was she there? She was there because love compelled her. She was there because faith sustained her. She was there because her presence was needed for the completion of our salvation. But most of all, she was there to show us what it means to be fully human in response to God's love. She was there to demonstrate that our cooperation with God's plan can participate in the redemption of the world. She was there to prove that love is stronger than death, faith is stronger than fear, and hope is stronger than despair. If this message has touched your heart today, please like this video and share it with others who need to hear Mary's story. Subscribe to this channel for more explorations of the deep truths that can transform our lives. And leave a comment sharing how Mary's example at the cross inspires your own faith journey. Mary, Mother of God, Queen of Heaven, our spiritual mother, pray for us who struggle to love as deeply as you loved. Help us to stand firm when our own crosses seem too heavy to bear. Teach us to say yes to God's will even when it costs us everything. And intercede for us always that we might follow your Son Jesus with the same faithfulness you showed at the foot of the cross. The cross that once seemed like the end of hope became the beginning of eternal life. Mary's presence there reminds us that our darkest moments can become our greatest gifts to the world when we unite them with Christ's sacrifice. Her example continues to light the way for all who seek to love without limit and trust without reservation. This is the mystery of Mary at the foot of the cross. Love that conquers death, faith that transforms suffering, and intercession bring these same gifts into your own life, and may her example inspire you to love with the same courage she showed on that